Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the snowy curtains of old Scandinavia and wake up as someone entirely new. Someone you've probably never imagined being. A Viking shipbuilder. The air is thick with wood smoke and sea salt. The fjords wind like frozen serpents outside your door, and a young you is standing barefoot in the frost, staring at a towering pine tree with something between awe and dread. Spoiler, you're about to chop that thing down with a dull axe and a lot of questionable technique. Yes, your arms will hurt. Yes, your beard, or future beard, will probably catch fire at some point. And no, you probably won't survive the occasional runaway saw blade or the boss's mysterious testing hammer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing whose evening I get to be a part of. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 10 winters old when your uncle drags you out of the longhouse one sleepy morning before the goats have even started bleeding. He hands you the axe, not a little wooden one, not a practice tool, but a real iron-headed one, slightly rusted, still sticky with something you hope is just pine sap. Go find the straightest tree you can, he grunts. We're starting your training. Your breath fogs the icy air as you trudge into the thicket. This is the beginning of everything. Your village lies at the edge of a deep fjord in what you now call Norway. The forests aren't just recycling oxygen, they're hiding materials for greatness. Unlike your friends being trained to fight or farm, your path is quieter, for now, until a hammer meets an iron rivet and makes that sharp. One thing they don't warn you about, splinters become a way of life. Forget fighting bears or raiding monasteries. Nobody tells you the true Viking test is pulling a 3-inch shard of birch from your thumb without crying in front of everyone. Still, slowly, you earn your place on the build team. Older builders stop correcting your grip. You're given chores with actual consequences, like fetching drinking water or stacking the curved planks in the correct steaming order. One day, a builder even lets you hold the sacred long axe, used only during the first cut. Your hands shake, you drool a little. Probably best not to remember that. Of course, not everything's poetic. You once watch a sparrow fly into a half-built mast and just vaporize. The bird's spirit now lives in the tool shed and knocks things over anytime someone swears too loudly. One night during a rare bit of quiet, you sit on the beached keel line and watch the stars stretch over the fjord. Someone plays a flute off in the halls. Golden firelight flickers on the frostbitten planks. And for a second, all calluses, bruises aside, you know this life might just be worth the icy toes. And that tree you chopped at the start, it's now part of the keel. The spine of a ship that will one day carve through northern waters like Thor's own axe. You touch the wood. It doesn't scream, but it hums. You're 13 when you get your first real blade of your own. Not a combat sword, not even a long dagger. Nope. You get a bearded axe with a beautifully worn maple handle and a name already etched into it. Skraeling Biter. Slightly dramatic, since it's never bitten anything except for tree bark and one unfortunate chicken coop. But still, it's yours. By now, the boatyard is as familiar as your own palms, though they're mostly just blisters now anyway. The scent that hangs in the air is a strange cologne of pine shavings, burning pitch, and iron dust. And you wouldn't trade it for the sweetest mead or even 10 coats without holes. Your days start early, even before the sun claws its lazy way above the ridgelines. Your uncle claps you on the back and mumbles something about axe rhythm. You follow him to the forge first, because without tools, a ship is just a pile of oddly shaped firewood waiting for disappointment. You don't just use tools in this life, you make them. The forge is a squat, smoky shelter with a roof that leaks if the rain comes in sideways. But the fire roars like a drunken bear, and the anvil sings with every hammer strike. It's the heart of everything. You step in with your uncle and a smith named Tove, who has 2 missing fingers and the patience of a lit fuse. She's the one who teaches you how to shape iron rods into rivets, carve handles from ash, and temper an edge until it gleams like dragon teeth. Tove also teaches you the most important lesson in smithing. Don't look too closely at what's in the bucket behind the forge. You never ask again. Your earliest workstation is a mess of wooden tubs, leather straps, and awkward clamps that never sit right. But using these primitive tools, your crew can split timber precisely, shape overlapping planks to perfection, and carve mortises so tight they might as well be sealed by elves. They're not, sadly, a thick paste of boiled animal fat and pine tar does the trick instead. You quickly realize the true magic's in the tools you don't see in modern times. Take the odds. That backwards axe-like tool that curves like your grandmother's spoon. It becomes an extension of your arm, hollowing out planks and shaving beams as you master its rhythm. Historians still argue whether Viking shipbuilders invented beveling techniques themselves or learned them from earlier cultures like the Anglo-Saxons. But one thing's clear. You can feel the past in your palms with every strike. On quieter afternoons, you make tools not just for yourself, but for barter. A well-polished plumb bob or an extra set of calipers earns you worn gloves, a knife sheath, or once a dried codfish so tough you could use it as a hammer. One quirky practice you love? The tool tide. For every 10 new rivets the smiths make, one's tossed into the ocean. Offerings to Ran, sea goddess of drowned sailors. Weird, sure, but nobody dares skip it. We once saw a guy try. His boat capsized 3 times in as many weeks. Coincidence? You don't think so? It becomes clear over time. Tools aren't just objects in this trade. They're stories with edges. And all passed down from 5 generations and still bears a fingerprint glue in the handle. A hammer had dented on a lucky rain. Now brings good fortune to anyone who wields it. Unless you're only pretend working. And it just accidentally falls on your toe. And have I mentioned the glue? You have to render it and boil down grooves and hide scraps. The stench is enough to make your soul peel back from your body. Holds a ship together like gossip holds together a Norse village. At some point, your uncle leaves you alone with Skraeling biter and a block of birch to test your shaping technique. You mess it up, obviously. The cut is wrong, the bevel uneven, and you step back only to realize you've shaped something that looks suspiciously like a wrong-footed chicken wing. Your uncle laughs so hard he nearly drops his mead. You get the nickname Chicken Beam for an entire season. Still, you build. And the tools begin to feel alive in your hands. The half-moon gouges carve patterns into oar handles. The long auger spirals perfectly through double planks. You even learn to twist iron with a rod and forge simple decorative flourishes. Nothing too flashy, but enough that your name starts getting whispered when a ship looks just a little too elegant. One evening, as twilight tugs the color from the mountaintops, you offer to repair old Lars's broken odds handle. He nods and tells you, "Don't break the history in it." No pressure or anything. The rehandled odds is a success. And for the first time in your life, someone other than a family member claps you on the shoulder and calls you shipwright. The next morning, you're assigned to the runner mount. Now, this might not sound exciting, but it's a huge honor. The runners are the sled-like cradles that ships rest on while in dry dock. If you mess this angle up, the finished ship will either wobble like a drunk elk or not slide into the water at all. It's your first serious geometry lesson. It involves rope, pegs, a lot of problem solving, and naturally someone falling into a slop bucket. Not you, though, this time. There's constant chatter in the boatyard. Charcoal marks sketching plans across wood, heated arguments on proper scarf joints, and the occasional dirty song about Odin's missing eye. It's comfortable chaos. And you're getting good. By now, the knife at your belt is handmade, the calluses on your hands are permanent, and your younger cousins whisper that you can speak to the wood. You can't. But you do know that each timber tells you something if you touch it long enough. The knots, the grain, the hidden weaknesses, the strength. You're not shaping a ship. You're conversing with it. And when your uncle finally announces, with a proud grunt, that your next task will involve preparing the keel timber, your heart nearly beats through your tunic. Yep, you made the tools for this. You learned the angles, swung the axes, choked on smoke, stained your tunic with glue that never quite comes out. And now you get to start on the spine of a Viking ship. No, you're not ready. But you're also not saying no. You stand beneath the sky where clouds stir like green hay, staring down at a massive, recently trimmed oak beam. It's longer than 3 men lying end to end, heavy as regret, and smooth from hours of your own planning. This, they tell you, is the key. It's a spell. Now it's sitting right there on timbers and bolts, waiting for hands like yours to shape it. Arms and human swords. Dragon. Senses of that's what they mean. Keys and glamours is not stormforged or dragon slaying. It's pain stitched alignment, precise curves, constant double checking. It's something like you just say that on the feet because you made the bottom curve was too steep. But here's the thing. The key is everything. It's the backbone of the key. You screw this up, the entire ship dies. Yeah, no pressure. You and 2 other apprentices begin by hauling the timber into position, using rolling logs and very unhelpful shouts from the foreman. You wedge it between 2 notched supports and sketch out the bottom curve with a charcoal-dipped string, the oldest, fussiest measuring technique known to mankind. And yes, it smudges with your elbow every 5 minutes. The curve or hollow of the keel isn't just a design element. It determines the ship's ability to slice through water. The ship rides like a drunken fox. So you don't need to sketch. Mine, gracefully. Your first few cuts are cautious, jittery. You pause before each swing, squint, readjust your stance. Yes, it's stressful. No, blinking doesn't help much. Eventually, your muscles remember what your brain is too tired to calculate: rhythm over speed. You find a pace, shaping the timber's contour in slow, satisfying bites. The wood shrugs under your steady blade, fragrant curls piling at your feet. After hours, 3 men grab the ends and flip it over. Now it needs to be planned and leveled. This is how you learn about truthing, that uniquely Viking method of ensuring both sides of the keel match. You dangle plumb bobs, stretch strings between pegs, and consult a primitive water level made from a hollow bone, a reed, and a lot of hope. There's a funny superstition in the yard. You're not supposed to work on the keel if you've quarreled with your lover the night before. Bad energy allegedly sinks ships, which is incredible because the man measuring angles alongside you has been in a full-speed argument with his neighbor's wife for 3 days and can't seem to let it go. You work a little farther away, just in case. While carving, your hand brushes a knot in the wood and you see it. Not just see it, really, feel it. Your eyes trace the growth patterns, the flex, the resilience baked into every ring. The keel starts to feel less like a log and more like a prophecy. This single skeletal board will carry dozens of warriors, merchants, maybe the odd stowaway chicken, across waters they've never seen. And somehow, your hands help make it real. To help the keel retain its strength and flexibility, it's soaked with a cocktail of pine tar, seal fat, and something suspicious from a barrel labeled only "Don't Splash." The mixture is heated until gooey and then slathered along the keel's entire length, stinking up the yard beautifully. It renders your hands permanently sticky and vaguely fish-scented. Attractive. Then comes the moment. You attach the forward and aft stems, gracefully curving vertical timbers that will eventually become the prow and stern. This part involves scarf joints, precise angled cuts that lock together so tightly a whisper can't get through. When Tove heats up rivets and you hammer them into place, sealing the first major bonds of the ship, it rings out like wedding bells on a glacier, echoing, sacred. The foreman declares the keel worthy, which is boatyard speak for no major complaints. And you all celebrate by chewing dried cod and drinking whatever is still fermenting behind the forge. Someone carves a crude face onto the stern to keep sea spirits amused. Sure, why not? The ship's officially started. It's beginning to look up, well, outwards, like it's already dreaming of a faraway ocean. That night, sitting by the fire with your muscles buzzing in your hands, stained dark with afternoon gloom. Someone mutters something that sticks with you. A keel is a grave waiting for bones. But if you get it right, the bones will dance. You spend half the night trying to figure out if that was poetic, terrifying, or just a really eloquent way of saying, don't let it leak. A curious fact someone drops while you're unstringing your measuring lines. Some Viking shipbuilders allegedly use whale bones or reindeer antlers as templates for certain curves, absorbing nature's geometry directly into their designs. Whether that's truth or tales cooked up during long winters, no one agrees. But it sounds credible enough. And now every antler you spot gets a second, more analytical glance. As you drift into sleep that night, sore and humming from pride, you realize something. These ships don't start with sails or shields. They don't begin with adventure or war cries. They begin with math and sweat and careful hands tracing silent shapes out of ancient wood. And yeah, all things considered, that's kinda beautiful. By now you live in two places at once. Your uncle's longhouse, where you sleep fully clothed under blankets that smell suspiciously like wet dogs, and the chantier, the boatyard, where your hands do most of their real living. Because shaping the keel was only the beginning. Now it's time to raise the body. Ribs, planks, bones, and skin. Shoulder by shoulder, piece by piece, your ship grows like a beast red from forest and fire. Planking starts sinking up. You cut along the flat boards from your timber stockpile, mostly pine, and sometimes old growth if you're lucky enough, politically connected. Then comes the world of lap-strike or clinker construction. You're about to learn why people's ships flex when it's sunk instead of sinking like a sack of rock full of regrets. The clinker method means each new plank overlaps the edge of the one below it, like dragon scales or shingles on it. Each curve must be cut, steamed, and fastened with stupid precision. When done right, the overlapping seams actually strengthen the hull, and the vessel dances through waves instead of punching them in the nose. Historians know clinker construction is what gave Norse longships their sleek speed and eerie silence on water. Scholars still argue whether the style evolved independently in the north or if it was borrowed from Roman naval tradition in a Norwegian remix. Either way, the result is legendary and a complete nightmare to master. First, you steam the planks. Heat, humidity, and swear words fuse together in a long horizontal box fitted with embers, water, and traps for any wandering children who might accidentally sit on a sizzling oak slat. For every hour of boiling, the wood softens just enough to bend into obedient arcs until it doesn't. Then it snaps like a treacherous cinnamon stick, shooting shards into the dirt and maybe someone's lunch. Today, your job is to clamp the first hull plank, what's called the garboard. It's the lowest board closest to the keel, and it sets the tone for everything that comes after. If it's even a hair-off angle, the ship ends up shaped like a potato, which, as stunning as that might look, is not ideal for crossing any body of water wider than a puddle. You line it up with cowgut plumb lines and whisper a few strong words under your breath. A master builder hovers nearby, watching like a hawk who's invested emotionally in the straight lines. He sniffs, adjusts one of your clamps half an inch, and walks away in silence. Apparently, that's high praise. Nailing the planks in place involves more than just brute force. You've got hand-forged iron rivets and long twisted nails called clench rings. For every nail you drive from outside, there's a partner inside the hull holding a small iron dolly. You hammer against the dolly, flattening the tip into a mushroom shape that locks the plank down tight. The first few times, your timing's off, and you nearly shatter your cousin's thumbnail straight through his glove. Sorry, you whisper. Fine, he is, but only cries a little. The beauty of clinker build? It lets the hull move, flex, when battered by waves. Other civilizations built stiff, boxy boats. Yours breathe. That's why they survive storms that flatten lesser vessels. Why they whisper across northern fog banks in eerie silence. Why can you sneak up on coastal villages for trade, or for other less diplomatic reasons? While installing the second course of planks, you learn to sing. Not well, not on key. But shipbuilding songs exist to to help you pace your swings, to ground repetitive tasks in rhythm. There's a joke in the yard. Can't hit a beat, can't hit a rivet. You're proud to say your song sounds only mildly like a dying walrus. And a quirky fact incoming. Some Viking yards buried small animal bones, like squirrel skulls or fish spines, under major plank joints for luck. You find two while prying old wood from a previous build. One still got teeth. Someone swears it means the ship will bite faster wings. You decide not to think too hard about that. As more planks go up, your eyes start seeing curves everywhere, in soap bowls, in riverbanks, in your dreams, which, by the way, now include violent wrestling matches with sentient ribs of pine. You wake up shouting things like, "Align the scarf," and once tried to choke your blanket from misplacing its bevel gauge. Some days slide into each other, you hammer clamp a heat bend repeat. At some point, you stop noticing the aching in your arms, your palms become armor, you bleed and keep hammering. Rain, lead, snow, winter makes the fire burn. But somehow, the whole grows fast, and slowly, your own reputation begins curling up along the planks. People love to you in the smokehouse. Shipmaster lets you walk its whole mid-construction, a sacred spot where only trusted workers allowed. And on some days, the one doesn't even check their joins with an angry stick. The major long rod used to hurry up where everyone messed up. Rare water. That night, scraping out the control valves and riveting, you lean back and gaze across the half-built ship. The keys still visible, now curved inwards, each proud and perfectly star-shaped rhythm, rise up like a ribcage draining the lungs. When this waste is done, you bring the shipbuilder inside against the builder to carry men, women, livestock, gold, ale, and hopes strong enough to gamble against gods. Someone passes around smoked fish and a jug of something warm and uplifting. One builder belts a song with half the lyrics replaced by hand noises. You join in, badly. The fire burns low. Soot smears your cheeks. The stars spin slowly over the fjord. The moon, the half-full moon, croons softly as it creaks and settles. And perhaps, just perhaps, begins to come alive. You sleep like the dead, curled up under a tarp, and still ringing the sound of hammer strikes. Down in the yard, the ship waits for morning. The boatyard wakes with the steam of breath and the groan of backs. You're barely vertical when someone shouts, "Iron Day!" which sounds exciting until you remember that it means hours of metal work, rivet counting, sweating near fire, and the high likelihood of singed hair. You trudge to the forge anyway, eyes still crusted with sleep, dragging a bucket of bent nails that need straightening. Welcome to glamour Viking style. The wood may shape the soul of the ship. It's iron that binds it. Without those spoon-shaped nails and L-shaped brackets made to nestle in each clinker lap, the planks would drift apart like bad in-laws at a wedding. And that's just the beginning. Today's work also involves brackets, anchor fittings, and the one component no builder likes to discuss, the dreaded support collar ring for the mast step, or as you call it, the screw-up circle. First, you work with Tove again, our resident magician of the flame. The forge roars like a dragon inhaling fuel, and if you stand too close, you get what she likes to call symphony cheeks, which is just a poetic Viking phrase for totally scorched. You and your team pull iron from beds of peat charcoal and shape it with heavy hammers, folding and drawing it out into rods. Ironworking isn't guesswork. It's about heat, color, timing, intuition. The metal sings when it's ready. Or screams if you wait too long. The clangs echo like a chorus of anvils down the fjord, and it's said that some folks can tell which yard is hammering just by sound alone. Kind of like when modern people can tell which neighbor's using the blender. Only this blender could kill you. You pass long nails to a younger apprentice who splits his thumb open trying to hammer them straight. You breathe deeply, finish the line for him, and call out for more pitch. He stares at you like you're not of this earth. How can someone work that fast? You tell him. Pointy end goes into the problem. He doesn't laugh. Maybe he's bleeding too much. A quick, quirky bit. The soot from old forges was sometimes saved and mixed with animal fat to create an ointment for cracked knuckles and cold, blasted cheeks. Does it work? Number, of course not. But your skin looks surprisingly youthful for someone who's aged 30 years since breakfast. The next task involves coating the hull, inside and out, with warm pine resin mixed carefully with seal fat. You heat the mixture into a bubbling tar and apply it with horsehair brushes, which leave behind irritating streaks unless you angle the stroke just right. The result, though, is magic. A gleaming, waterproofed skin that smells like a forest campfire and clings even during angry high tides. It's sticky and it's messy. You accidentally glue your tunic to the side of the ship, and someone has to pour water down your back to free you. This is a bonding moment. You think you're now legally married to your cousin's elbow, which got stuck in the same patch of pitch. Now comes the part you've dreaded all week. Installing the mast step, the piece of wood and iron that will eventually hold the ship's great sailpost steady. It needs to be anchored evenly between the ribs, curved to take the shaking strain of heavy wind. Set it with iron bands you forged yourself. Double, triple check your angles. Mind the sight of my arm. You even sneak in a small prayer, quiet, flashing, to Thor of the wind. Careful, your uncle says. If the mast step fails, the whole ship fails. No pressure. You tighten the bands, fill the joints with resin and cloth to prevent shifting, and wipe your brow. The others crowd around and test the placement by rocking back and forth on it. Not gentle, mind you, but full knee shoves and loud grunts. It holds. Not bad for a step once nicknamed the Widowmaker. Then it's time to seal the seams. You kneel at the belly of the ship with a handful of coarse wool tufts, shoves of lanolin-rich animal hair, and thin strips of rawhide. You pack them between every overlapping plank with a hammer and flat wedge, murmuring insults at each squeaky crevice. It's long, numb-fingered work, but it means that your ship weeps less when she floats. Historians agree that Viking ships were shockingly watertight for open sea vessels, largely thanks to this seam-packing technique called caulking, not to be confused with modern caulk, which thankfully doesn't involve goat hair. You ask your uncle if there's a cleaner method. He pats you on the back and says, "Sure, do it cleaner, and I'll throw you in to test it." All this iron, all this tar begs one question. Where does it go when broken at sea? Well, you carry spares, always. There's a repair box built into the decking plan. Even now, you're tucking extra rings, pins, rivets, and hardened pitch bricks into canvas bags that get tied beside the rowing benches. On a Viking ship, the shipwright stays close. There's no vacation from floating responsibility. If your plank leaks, You patch it during a squall, likely using one hand, while the other holds on to a rope with your teeth. One belief making the rounds, possibly a myth, is that every ship should have precisely 9 invisible iron nails on the prow to prevent sea trolls from climbing aboard. Someone tried to test this. Their ship disappeared. Coincidence? As punishment for letting that barrel of seal fat sit out too long and making the yard smell like a rotting walrus. You're volunteered to do evening cleanup. You inventory nails, line up tools for tomorrow, and scrape hardened pitch off every surface like you're peeling fate itself. The sky glows lavender gray as the sun dips behind snow-fringed cliffs. Seagulls scream like banshees near the river mouth. The ship gleams dully in the waning light, her hull black with resin, her ribs ribbing like arches in a temple. She's still nameless. A blank warrior waiting for a title. You slide a newly forged oarlock into its joint and feel how snug it fits. You made that. It's not much in the grand scale, but it's part of something huge and fast and uncomfortably buoyant. You walk home, arms coated in soot and glue specks, boots squelching in mud. Your legs ache, your head hums, and your whole body smells like a forge swallowed by a pine tree. But inside you're fireproof. Wool sails and sharp wind. Sounds romantic, doesn't it? Until you've spent 3 waking days tangled in wool threads that stick to everything, from your hands to your eyebrows, and stink vaguely of barnyard and storm. Today's task is sail making, which is less about elegance and more about urine, sheep, and a whole new level of stubborn craftsmanship. So, there you are again, perched at the edge of the sail house, with your knees braced against the worn plank floor, rubbing lanolin into enough wool to carpet 3 longhouses. The cloth lies stretched across the beams, like skin on a drying rack, waiting patiently while your fingers do the serious magic. You might be tempted to think it's just a giant rectangle. Not even close. Viking sails are trapezoids, wider at the bottom than the top, to catch wind more efficiently. Each square meter has to be layered and stitched with tension that'll make your knuckles scream. Material: pure wool, not linen, not cotton, wool. Thick, greasy, water-resistant wool, thanks in part to a soaking treatment involving fermented urine. Yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. Somebody stores pea in clay pots until it's good and ready. Then you dunk the wool to soften and clean it. You try not to breathe through your nose for most of this process. Quirky fact: that fermented urine bath was referred to by some as lorg, and apparently it worked as a whitening agent too. Some ambitious Viking teenager once discovered that soaking tunics in last week's chamber pot made them look more noble. Fast forward a decade, and you've got half of Scandinavia walking around in pea-bleached robes, wondering why no one wants to sit next to them at feasts. You're working now with a herd of frazzled weavers, mostly older women with goose-like efficiency and judgment-heavy stares. They hand-spin yarn from sheep fleece, twist it into the weft, and beat it into place on a vertical loom with such authority it might knock wisdom into your bones. You try your hand at the loom once. The result looks like a fabric cursed by Loki himself, so they hand you the needle. Every inch of this sail must be hand-stitched. No shortcuts, no looming machines, just thick threaded wool, stitched with needles carved from bone, and hands that must hold both strength and surrender. You sew until your fingers cramp, guiding the curved sailcloth into
nonsense about wind directions because it makes you feel vaguely intelligent. The seams are sewn with a technique called feld stitching. Fold over, stitch, fold again, stitch again. Like a culinary recipe for uncompromising strength. Each reinforces a seam as bent to the next ones, slashing the spread, and occasional seam or finger issues. It's not just one big seam. Fashion attach points, reinforced corners, and small pockets. The next few days, the high wall flattens into foam. Colors, naturally dyed from iron, wood, and bark, breathe life into the rock. Reds, browns, open greens. If someone snuck in somewhere and died from across the seas, the story would still bring you just how brightly colored Viking sails were. Some think they were mostly dull, utilitarian hues, browns, greens, blacks, maybe wine red, flashing. Others think shipbuilding raiders covered their sails like many to show power, or seeming to look cruel to the other guys, stabbing their way to Venus flag.
One thing's for sure, your sail will be a deep walnut brown with a border stitched in charcoal-dipped thread. Subtle, seriously, shipwright chic. After a week of sewing, tanning, brushing, and reinforcing, it's ready to be rigged. The mast, standing proudly above the nearly completed hull, is lashed with rawhide straps and wooden pegs. It's your job to haul the sail up for its first hang. The entire yard watches as you, soaked in sweat and smelling like half a sheep farm, grip the ropes and pull. Air catches the sail. It lifts, first lazily, then suddenly, flapping wide like wings awakening. The wooden pole bows slightly, and the crowd breathes in. A ship with a sail becomes something different. Not just a vessel, not just a floating log, but a creature, a hunter of horizons. Everyone claps. You blush, mostly because a drop of sticky pitch falls directly onto your forehead in celebration. Now the rigging. Welcome to ropes. Miles of the stuff, twisted from hemp or linden bark, soaked in oil, braided by hand over the course of months. You've got halyards, sheets, stays, lifts, and lines, every one of them named, mapped, assigned. You spend the entire morning crawling over the beams, tying half-hitch knots with your teeth, and trying not to fall onto the smithy's new anvil. There's tradition here, too. You always twist the rope clockwise. Widdershins are considered unlucky. You spit on the final knot before cinching, offer a quick blessing to Njord. And for good measure, someone sacrifices a boiled fish by hiding it under the mast wedge. No one talks about it, but you all know it's there. Want a weird one? Some shipwrights wrap a chicken foot into the first yard arm loop, tied with blue wool, keeps evil weather spirits confused, allegedly. Honestly, it just seems like a very confusing time for the chicken. Once hoisted, the sail itself becomes a shadow over your workyard, casting fluttering ripples across the freshly tarred hull. The ship doesn't sway yet, but in the breeze, you swear it almost leans forward, like it knows where it's headed. You spend the rest of the day tweaking tension in the ropes, sanding down the yard arms, and counting your bruises. There's an art to making the sail sit right. Too loose and you get slapping wind tantrums that tear threads. Too tight, and the mast might crack in heavy gusts. And almost forgot, don't mix up the front stays with the back ones. Last season someone did that and their ship turned a full circle under sail. Impressively theatrical, entirely unhelpful. By nightfall, the sail flaps softly above the hull, proud and ambitious. You collapse onto stacked ropes with your face full of sea air and lanolin. The stars blink awake overhead like curious gods. And everything, your rust-stained nails, your glue-stuck tunic, your oddly steamed boots, seems to smile quietly with you. The ship is almost whole, just a few dragons left. You wake to the scent of burned bread and the distant sound of someone arguing with a seagull. True signs that it's been a week since someone fell into the pitch barrel. Progress. The ship now stands proud in the dry dock, her hull complete, sail rigged and mast towering like a spear at dusk. Only one thing remains before she's truly ready to meet the sea: her figurehead. And not just any decoration. This isn't the Little Mermaid bolted to the bow. This is the face of the ship, equal parts prayer, threat, and silent scream. Carving the figurehead falls to a small but powerful team. And today, you're one of them. Your crew debates. Dragon, serpent, or more symbolic shapes, like wolves or ravens, or the mysterious bearded face that looks suspiciously like someone's uncle who owed half the village money last winter. Eventually, the decision lands on a dragon. Always a favorite, ferocious, regal, guaranteed to make enemies hesitate and friends jealous. But not all dragons are created equal. Historians still debate the precise significance of Viking figureheads. Were they made to ward off spirits, to scare off coastal villagers, to identify ships at a distance in times before sail numbers and license plates? Maybe all of the above. Some sagas hint that figureheads were removed before sailing into friendly harbors, just to avoid offending land spirits. And some say a prow with open eyes could see monsters in the sea before they struck. You don't know if that's true, but you wouldn't want to test it. The wood comes from twisted old oak, dried and seasoned far longer than most other ship parts. It's dense, hard to cut, and nearly impossible to see through cleanly. That makes it perfect for a feature that has to withstand waves, wind, and possibly rocks thrown by angry monks. Using thick chisels, carving knives, and a small mallet handed down from someone who claimed to have carved a prow in Iceland. Though he also claimed to have shrunk a troll with salt, so you begin. One thing's for sure, your sail will be a deep walnut brown with a border stitched in charcoal-dipped thread. Subtle, seriously, shipwright chic. After a week of sewing, tanning, brushing, and reinforcing, it's ready to be rigged. The mast, standing proudly above the nearly completed hull, is lashed with rawhide straps and wooden pegs. It's your job to haul the sail up for its first hang. The entire yard watches as you, soaked in sweat and smelling like half a sheep farm, grip the ropes and pull. Air catches the sail. It lifts, first lazily, then suddenly flapping wide, like wings awakening. The wooden pole bows slightly, and the crowd breathes in. A ship with a sail becomes something different. Not just a vessel, not just a floating log, but a creature, a hunter of horizons. Everyone claps. You blush, mostly because a drop of sticky pitch falls directly onto your forehead in celebration. Now, the rigging. Welcome to ropes. Miles of the stuff, twisted from hemp or linden bark, soaked in oil, braided by hand over the course of months. You've got halyards, sheets, stays, lifts, and lines, every one of them named, mapped, assigned. You spend the entire morning crawling over the beams, tying half-hitch knots with your teeth and trying not to fall onto the smithy's new anvil. There's tradition here, too. You always twist the rope clockwise. Widdershins are considered unlucky. You spit on the final knot before cinching, offer a quick blessing to Njord. And for good measure, someone sacrifices a boiled fish by hiding it under the mast wedge. No one talks about it, but you all know it's there. Want a weird one? Some shipwrights wrap a chicken foot into the first yard arm loop, tied with blue wool. Keeps evil weather spirits confused, allegedly. Honestly, it just seems like a very confusing time for the chicken. Once hoisted, the sail itself becomes a shadow over your workyard, casting fluttering ripples across the freshly tarred hull. The ship doesn't sway yet, but in the breeze, you swear it almost leans forward, like it knows where it's headed. You spend the rest of the day tweaking tension in the ropes, sanding down the yard arms and counting your bruises. There's an art to making the sail sit right. Too loose and you get slappin' wind tantrums that tear threads. Too tight and the mast might crack in heavy gusts. And, almost forgot, don't mix up the front stays with the back ones. Last season someone did that and their ship turned a full circle under sail. Impressively theatrical, entirely unhelpful. By nightfall, the sail flaps softly above the hull, proud and ambitious. You collapse onto stacked ropes with your face full of sea air and lanolin. The stars blink awake overhead like curious gods, and everything, your rust-stained nails, your glue-stuck tunic, your oddly steamed boots, seems to smile quietly with you. The ship is almost whole, just a few dragons left. You wake to the scent of burned bread and the distant sound of someone arguing with a seagull. True signs that it's been a week since someone fell into the pitch barrel. Progress. The ship now stands proud in the dry dock, her hull complete, sail rigged and mast towering like a spear of dust. Only one thing remains before her. She's truly ready to be at sea. Her figurehead, and not just a decoration. This isn't the Little Mermaid bolted into the bow. This is the face of the ship, equal parts prayer, thread and silent scream. The carving of the figure leads to a smooth, powerful team. And today, debates, dragon, serpent, symbolic shapes, Vikings or ravens, a mysterious face that looks suspiciously like someone's uncle who owed half the village money last winter. Eventually, the decision lands on a dragon. Always a favorite, ferocious, regal, guaranteed to make enemies hesitate and friends jealous. But not all dragons are created equal. Historians still debate the precise significance of Viking figureheads. Were they made to ward off spirits? To scare off ghostly villagers? To identify ships at a distance at times before sail numbers and license plates? Maybe all of the above. Some sagas hint that figureheads were removed, sailing into friendly harbors just to avoid defending the land spirits. And some say sea monsters in the sea before they struck. That's true. But you wouldn't want to test it. The wood comes from twisted old oak, and seasoned far longer than most other ship parts. It's dense, hard to cut, and nearly impossible to see through. That makes it perfect for a feature that has to withstand waves. Impossible rocks thrown by angry monks, using chisels, carving knives, and a small mallet handed down from someone who claimed to have carved morale in Iceland. But we also think to have shrunk the trolls. First, you sketch the outline in charcoal. Sweeping horns, gaping jaws, fangs that curve inward just so, like a warning. Before you make a single cut, you walk around the timber 3 times. An old superstition to make sure you don't carved the wrong soul. You wish this was a joke? It's not. Last year, someone carved what they thought was a friendly raven, and it ended up looking like a winded goat. The crew refused to sail with it. Your first slice is fine and slow, and the curl of oak that peels back feels like a sigh. More follow. The curve of the brow, the edges of the nostrils, the twist between anger and majesty in the beast's snarl. This isn't just skill, it's performance. Each cut is a moment, and the mood matters. That's why you don't care. You take breaks if your temper flares. No one wants a figurehead cursed with your bad mood. Then comes the eye sockets. Everyone pauses. You can feel the tension across the yard. There's a belief that the eyes are what give the ship her sight. The prow will guide her across all waters. So if the eyes are wrong, if they're unfocused or off-center, the ship might lose her way. It might, even in fair weather, drift off course. So you take your time. You do not speak. You cut the first cavity, then the second. And to your genuine relief, they match. The dragon doesn't leer or look startled. No whoops energy. Just calm power. Like it knows where it's going. And you're lucky enough to come along. Painting the figurehead is another tradition. Earthy pigments are mixed. Red from iron oxide. Black from charcoal dust. Even deep green from crushed nettles simmered overnight. You paint its eyes with ash and crushed bone to give it a haunting gleam, and highlight the teeth in glistening white clay to ensure they flash in cannonball sunlight. Quirky bit. There's an old tale about a figurehead so terrifying that it caused enemy ships to turn round without combat. It supposedly had moving parts, a jaw that clacked when turned by the wind. Sounds like someone had a little too much mead and a lot of time on their hands. But hey, top points for nautical horror. After the detailing is finished, it's time to attach the beast to the prow. This is not a moment for shaking hands or second guesses. The head is bolted with thick iron pins, lashed with leather, and finally sealed with pine pitch. It's a ceremony, honestly. You and your workmates stand back, hands on your hips, sweat on your cheeks, staring at your creation. She's beautiful. She's terrifying. She is everything you hoped she'd be. To cap it off, you insert 2 coins into a small niche carved into her throat. One is a standard offering to the sea god Aegir. The second is for passage. Yours or some raiders, or maybe one of the silent souls hiding in the ship's shadow. Tradition, again. You whisper a few words, not a prayer exactly, but a request. Guide this hull across all waters. Speak if you see death. Sleep while we sleep. Fight when we cannot. Someone claps you on the shoulder. Good teeth on this one, they say. Might even scare off taxes. And then, because shipbuilders are people too, you spend the latter half of the day carving smaller, decorative accents, tiny spirals at the stern, swirling waves etched along the rail, even a couple of fish with smirking faces hidden under the rowing benches. Viking boats are deadly, yes, but they're also art, and you're proud of that. As you pack up your tools, night rises slowly and quietly. The fjord glows under starlight. The dragon prow, just hours ago raw timber, now gleams, eyes shining like twin moons, facing the sea with hunger. You sleep under its shadow that night, curled against a pile of rigging rope, listening to the soft creak of wood expanding in the cool dark. Somewhere nearby, wolves howl, wind snaps a sail corner, and the dragon watches. Launch day doesn't sneak up. It roars in like a storm tide, dragging every able hand from beds, breakfast, and any hope of a leisurely morning. You bolt awake to shouting, half excitement, half someone realizing they've mislaid the ceremony of goose. Yes, there's a goose involved. You'll get to that. The ship rests uneasily, proud and huge and twitching from every gust of wind, balanced on her runners like a dancer, just before the music starts. Over the past few days, you've helped apply the final coatings of resin, tightened the rigging, and polished every inch of the prow. You've oiled the oars, checked the bailing scoops, and eaten more dried fish than any person reasonably should. Now all that's left is gravity. But first, ceremony. Before a Viking longship was allowed to kiss seawater, it was tradition to bless her, gift her, and in some cases, threaten her into obedience. You gather with the yard crew, the jarls, the local priest, who may or may not also be the butcher, and about 30 people who just showed up for snacks. Everyone's festive, but quiet, like you're standing in a room with something sacred. The first offering is mead, drizzled along the hull to give Njord and Aegir, gods of wind and sea. Then come the runes, a small stone engraved with protective symbols is fastened near the mast base with wax and string, hidden beneath a decorative plank. Only shipwrights are supposed to know it's there. Quirky aside, one yard's tradition involved burying a small eel under where the rudder will hang, not to harness luck, but they claim to keep the hull slippery. Whether it's superstition or someone just trying to get rid of an annoying eel, no one agrees. Finally, the goose makes its dramatic entrance. No, the goose is not sacrificed. Well, usually not. In your village, it's released in front of the ship just before the first movement. If it scurries quickly and unbothered into the water, it's a sign the voyage will go smoothly. If it flaps the wrong way, or heaven forbid poops on the hull, that's not ideal. You hold your breath as the bird is let loose, and it waddles quite smugly across the beach, honks 3 times, and dives into the fjord without hesitation. Cheers erupt. You unclench your jaw. We're good to go. You secure your position at the ship's stern to help steer the hull down, the stern post jutting up like a proud tail behind you. Wooden runners have been set along a ramp greased with animal fat and old seal oil. So slippery it's become an unofficial skating rink for children and one very unfortunate pig. 1, 2, 3. Heave! Dozens of hands push. The ship creaks, groans once like it's waking up from a long nap, and then begins to move, first slowly, then with speed, then with amazing, potentially dangerous enthusiasm. The ship leaps forward, sledding down the greased ramp, the runners clapping against the earth, slinging mud onto your boots and glee into your throat. People shout, laughter rings, a dog barks so hard it trips, and then splash. She's in. The hull rocks hard as it hits water and settles with that low moaning sound you've heard only in dreams. Floating. Alive. A creature born. People run to the edge of the fjord to watch her settle. Someone throws a full mug of ale across the rail in blessing. Someone else trips and falls in. Someone, maybe you, tears up just slightly, but hides it by pretending there's sawdust in the breeze. The ship floats like a charm, high, balanced, graceful. The dragon prow lifts defiantly. The sail ripples slightly, even unraveled. Oars are passed aboard, benches tested, and an anchor stone dropped to hold her steady while final fittings are done. Then comes something no one warns you about. Ballast. You climb aboard with chicken legs still wobbling from excitement and find the crew loading sacks, stones, even bundles of animal bones near the bottom of the hull. Some of this is to weigh the ship evenly, but surprisingly, not all. You spy a caged basket of live eels. That's right, eels, slippery, wriggling, and completely unimpressed by your questions. You ask one of the older shipwrights, why the eels? He says, to keep the bottom from drying out too fast. Right. Apparently eels kept in the lower hull swim through minor leaks, stirring up water that helps retain moisture in the wood, especially after the boat's first swim. If that sounds absurd, you're not alone. Scholars still argue whether this was practical maintenance, or if someone just always had spare eels and time on their hands. Still, the hiss and slither of them somehow seems to relax the ship. It creaks less, floats more evenly. Maybe the eels are doing their job, or they've unionized. You'll never know. You also help secure 2 water barrels, an oilskin patch kit, extra sails, and a prayer bag, thin leather filled with feathers, herbs, and hair, hung just under the tiller, for luck, always luck. A local weaver brings a small embroidered banner to attach above the sail line, a black raven on bone-white linen. You climb up and secure it near the yard arm, while everyone below holds their breath. When it snaps free in the wind, whipping proudly, they cheer like raiders spotting land. This is the moment tattoos are made for. You slide back down to the deck, run your fingers along the polished planks, and remember every single splinter, hammer bruise, and glue blister that got you here. You touch the pitch-sealed planks and see your own reflection, the dark, gleaming finish. This ship will sail. This ship might raid, trade, explore, or return home heavier with stolen silver and so stories. It might not come back at all. You've known ships to splinter and foreign bays, vanish completely between storm swells. But this one carries your mark every tightening at sea. As the crew warriors to return to the feast, someone hands you a carved horn cup, something warm, probably safe to drink finally. Down by the beach, the ship bobs steadily. Dragon head slicing moonlight, eel cargo presumably securing moral dominance. She'll sail soon. And when she does, you'll be aboard, not just because you're the builder, because she wouldn't trust anyone else to fix her mid-voyage. There's something about life aboard a Viking ship that no land training can fully prepare you for. And you learn this the minute the oars bite into salt water and your lunch tries to escape out of both ends. You've sailed a few short test runs before to check for leaks and adjust the rigging, but today marks your first open water journey as the shipwright on board. Not as cargo, not as an observer. You are part of the crew now. And that means if a plank cracks, a rivet loosens, or a beam shifts, they don't turn the ship around. They turn to you. And your little box of emergency tools, that's your lifeline. A curved adze, a half dozen spare rivets, a bone-handled scraper, rawhide binding, blobs of pitch packed in cloth, and, your personal favorite, a problem mallet, big enough to knock sense into both wood and panicking rowers. The drum beats kick in, not the kind from Hollywood heroic marches, but a slow, wet thud from a man banging a bowl with mild enthusiasm from the front of the ship. It helps rowers keep time. Sometimes. Mostly it signals when to switch arms before you pull something permanently. You help steer from the rear next to the helmsman, seated beside them, curved blade that drags in the water on the starboard side. That's right. Starboard literally means steering in Old Norse, because it's where the steerboard went. Vikings got literal in their naming. Port. That was just the side you could dock without snapping your rudder off. 1 hour in, and already something sounds wrong. It's nothing dramatic, just a dull creak, like a yawn through wood. You crawl along the hull and trace the sound to one of the mid-planks near oars Station 5. A rivet's loose, not fully worked free, but dancing. Could be from uneven pressure, changes in humidity, or the fact that one of the rowers has the subtle grace of a mule in a windstorm. You wedge into the crawl space between benches, brace your feet, and go to work. Tap, 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 plink. The old rivet pops out. You hammer in the replacement, lay on a fresh patch of tarred wool, and melt a blob of pitch with a hot iron kept in coals at the rear brazier. All while the hull trembles beneath you, and seawater kisses your ankles playfully. Above deck, it's all movement and muscle. Oars thump in wooden locks. Sails occasionally billow as breezes shift. The sky is vast, and the fjord opens wide into a deeper, darker ocean. And you're scrunched under a bench, chewing dry fish with pitch-stained fingers and fixing your second planking seam. It's chaotic, uncomfortable, and oddly enough, it's your happy place. You even get affectionately labeled deck gremlin by your crewmates. You take it as a compliment. The merchant's daughter tells tales of a ship where the main beam cracked mid-crossing, and the crew used their shield rims soaked to seal bladders, and one angry rooster to race it until they made sure. She might be exaggerating the bear, because out here, when something breaks, it's you against the ocean. And let's be clear, the ocean is unmoving. That night, anchored near a rock sheltered bay, you settle into sleep just under the sea. Hold tight beside your toolkit like a craftsman in the needle. The hull creaks like a sleeping cat. Somewhere along, starlight skips off the dragon prime with a quiet purr. Someone sings a sea lullaby entirely in good references. You're too tired to care, but just as the light sets in, someone shakes your shoulder. Blink. Oh yes, your moment. You climb down into the ankle-deep beach. It's dark, wet, and smells like oil sweat, but this is your domain now. The light from a small oil lamp flickers as you trace the water source. A fresh knot is swung loose in the lower, joined to a mid-14 plank restart. You wedge a claw plug into it, reinforce it with more caulking at a strip of rope, then weigh it until the swelling tightens. No heroic fanfare, no dramatic music, just slow, steady repair beneath sleeping warriors. You see the ship 20 gallons of water in, 2 hours of maintenance and breakfast. You can be now, but someone will save you the biggest piece of dried meat at sunrise. You do a quiet victory dance behind the mast. It's not elegant. By now you know to prepare for specific disasters. Snapped lashings, sail tears, a spar that might crack if the wind jerks just wrong. So, you maintain your sea kit. Every shipwright gets one. Yours includes resin balls, tucked in wax leather, linen thread wrapped around the haft of your awl, an Ono jar filled with spare shavings, and a lucky chicken foot dyed blue, just in case. Quirky ship fact: the best tested Viking repair trick, known gleefully as fartakopar, or speed patching, involved animal bladders inflated like balloons and sealed over holes using rawhide glue. They worked like a medieval version of removable suction cups. Ugly? Yes, but they floated. Mid-voyage, you pass into deeper water. The sea rolls harder. Things thump with purpose. You stand alert, adjusting lines, checking every wooden groan. You learn to distinguish between friendly creak and unfriendly splinter. You tighten lashings before they ask. And part of you senses something powerful. This ship, once just timber and sweat, is truly yours. Not because of ownership, but because she knows your hands. She trusts your hammer. She sways in your rhythm. Your uncle would be proud. Your first major storm finds you 2 days out from port. It sweeps in as a wall of wet gray. Sails stashed, oars pulled in tight. And then every man and woman braces as the sea turns from blue to boiling slate. You wedge yourself between ribs and reinforce a weak spar, lashing it tighter even as cold spray stings your eyes. Lightning splits a nearby cloud. The dragon on the prow seems to snarl. The ship slaps each wave like a challenge, and you crawl across the slick decking with a hammer in hand, and you smile. Madness, maybe. But this is what you built her for. When the storm passes, the boat stands steady. No hull breach, no plank gap, no eel panic. The captain mutters, she holds together better than any ship I've sailed. Someone else whispers, it's the shipwright. You pretend you didn't hear. But your heart, yeah, that thing's flipping cartwheels under your ribs. By now you've got sea legs, sea feet, sea hair, sea eyebrows. You're basically woven from soul. Days aboard bleed into it, marked not by time but by tasks. Attention, adjustments, stern whispers to yourself about that one trust. But today drops you right back or accidentally trade your bones for gold. The ship drifts into a bustling dock, not like a time, but a trade post. You can smell it before you see it. Fish, pitch smoke, wet fur, and that curiously ripe blend of wet burlap and ambition. Wooden piers creak under cargo. Ropes flap. Children dart dangerously close to unloading oxen. And everyone talks at once. Oxide, a bizarre ritual. See, a Viking ship's value isn't just in its cargo, it's in its craftsmanship. Nobles, merchants, foreign dignitaries, and the occasional curious monk swarm you the moment you drop anchor. They admire the smooth hull, run their fingers along your dragon's teeth, and each secretly tries to figure out how much it would cost to have you build them one. Fun fact, many Viking shipwrights were leased like blacksmiths or artisans. Not bought but borrowed, sent to Dublin or York or even parts of modern-day Russia to work under a new jarl for a season. It's flattering, sure, but it's also basically being gifted like an especially sweaty wedding centerpiece. As you secure the mooring lines and help reinforce the gangplank, a man in a fine fur cloak approaches. He's clearly important, mostly because no one with eyebrows that are symmetrical does their own rowing. My jarl is looking for someone, he says, a builder, someone who sweats pitch and curves hulls like long-forgotten gods. You blink. You nod. You try not to sneeze into your own hair. He proposes a meeting. Suddenly, you're at a long table lined with silver plates, grilled apples, and enough roasted lamb to distract even the tightest negotiator. On one side, a jarl leaning so far back in his chair you're not sure he's awake. On the other hand, you, covered in sail soot and hoping you're not sitting on anything important. The jarl blinks open one eye. That ship is yours? I helped build her, you say humbly. Good bones. Sails like a knife on butter, slow to yaw and stiff in the wind, just how I like it. Have you ever considered defecting? You nearly choke on your lamb. Not that kind of defecting, he chuckles. I mean, coming here for a season, building for me. The offer's tempting. His yard looks better stocked. The forge, proper stone-lined. And the apprentices aren't trudging through 3 feet of mud to get to the timber stacks. But there's one thing you notice: their ships lack soul. Tidy, yes. Evenly crafted, sure. But something's missing. That spine tingle that comes from oars hands smoothed by apprenticed palms, dragon heads carved while whispering to the sea, sails sewn to the rhythm of local song. You thank him kindly, decline politely. Mostly because your own keel still needs resanding, and someone on your ship definitely left a sharp tool lying blade up. That night, back at the dock, you trade instead. Not labor, but parts. The T-shaped iron clamp you forged during your last longhouse lockdown, gone in 60 seconds, swapped for 2 good scythes and a beautifully balanced throwing axe that may or may not be cursed. You try it once against a post. It sticks so well the post lets out a squeak. You barter reason by weight, offer up spare carving tools, and even, yes, sell a few instruction diagrams you scratched into lambskin. One merchant calls them revolutionary. You call them poorly drawn but informative. There's a quirky barter trick you pick up from an old sailor with more tattoos than remaining teeth. When uncertain about a trade, press your thumb against the other person's. If their thumb's cold, the gods don't approve. If their thumb's warm, proceed. If their thumb's wet, politely walk away. One stall offers goods from the east, spices, fine silks, glass beads that glimmer like magic. Another sells decorative nail heads, etched with animal motifs. You buy 2 for your next project's prow. Ravens, maybe. It's always ravens or wolves, sometimes both. Then, amidst the chatter, you hear the word Tarzakar. It means builder's favor. A small but powerful token, essentially a whispered recommendation. A shipwright you once helped during a storm recommends your name to someone wealthy and dangerous looking. And suddenly, you're not just a builder anymore. You're a name that moves across docks like smoke. With that comes certain consequences. Later, someone tries to sneak into your ship after sundown. You're already on board checking a warped deck slat. You hear the creak of unfamiliar boots and catch the shadow sneaking toward your rigging box. Without hesitation, you pick up your hammer and make several generous offers for him to leave. He does, loudly and backwards. You sleep lightly after that, eyes half open, tools tucked under your blanket like a security animal. Next morning, you meet a man who claims to have invented a sail stabilizer made of whalebone, amber, and prayer. You test it. It nearly breaks your left knee. Innovators, right? By the end of dock week, you've acquired 1 dubious throwing axe, 4 bolts of tightly woven wool for sail repair, 2 manuscripts on foreign ship shapes, Roman, Persian, unclear, 8 new blisters, 1 compliment from a monk who thinks you're definitely underpaid, and perhaps most importantly, clear proof that your ship works, moves fast, holds up under inspection, feels admired. She's now a reputation floating. You load your barrels, toss the final ties, and wave the dock farewell. As you take one last look from the stern, you spot another shipwright staring at your figurehead with quiet awe. He whispers something to his apprentice. You don't hear all of it, but you catch the words. That's not a ship. That's a story. You smile. You turn back to see. You've got more hulls to tend and promises to keep. By the time you return to your home harbor, your fingernails contain the dirt of 3 kingdoms. Your hair could trap a bear, and your toolkit is more famous than half your cousins. The ship creaks comfortably beneath your boots as you walk her deck, tightening ropes and whispering to the wood like an old friend. She's held up, better than most in fact. But you know better than to count your blessings without offering something in return. And what's owed now is the gods. Your uncle meets you on the beach with a smirk and a basket of semi-identifiable meat pastries. You help haul the dragon-nosed beauty up the launch runners while children cheer and someone's accidentally sacrificed dinner to a tide pool. Typical homecoming. But before the ship can be named, before it can officially join the village's fleet, or be sent onward to trade, protect, or pillage, it must receive divine approval, and maybe a sandwich. This is when your life shifts from hammer and clamp to runes and prayers. The ship isn't just a thing anymore. She's part of your people now, and every plank, nail, and fiber must be honored accordingly. In the coming days, you'll carve, chant, and maybe even give up your lunch for reasons no one explains very clearly. The carving begins first. You start with the runes, cuts into the gunwale planks and railings, shallow at first, then deeper, long angled lines that twist into ancient Norse characters. Even if you're mostly literate in practical ship math, rune carving feels like a conversation with time. Each line binds the past to the present, the physical to the spiritual. You repeat specific incantations under your breath. Ma this skipper holds fast, swift as raven flight, sure as Thor's right hand. Not too serious, but not flippant either. Humor and reverence dance side by side. This being a culture where gods often get mildly drunk, fight monsters, and complain about the cold. Your favorite rune to carve? Algiz, the protector. Resembling the upturned branches of a tree, it's nestled against the base of the prow, just behind the dragon head. Some say it wards off spirits, others say it just helps the ship know where it's going, which sounds soft and harmless until you've seen a vessel lose its bearing mid-gale. Then come the symbols, knot spirals, gripping beasts, twisted limbs of snakes forming wards, and circles along the railing. It's not just for decoration. Some believe binding the shapes in that specific style traps any wayward spirits in the pattern, confusing them long enough for the wind to carry you out of reach. And here's where things get interesting. The ritual offerings begin. It's not quite a sacrifice, not at first. More like a very elaborate bribe. You prepare a meal for the ship, a ceremonial platter of goat meat, lentils, rye cakes, and what can only be described as fermented fish paste with assertive opinions. Then you sit it at the prow, let it bask in the open air, and wait while the elders mumble over it, eyes closed, muttering things like not bad and no bones snuck in. This time good. But you're not done yet. There's tradition, a little grammatically ambiguous, that says either a blood offering is made or a symbolic one. The symbolic route pleases your internal organs greatly. So instead of actual human or animal offerings, you present tokens, feathers from a peregrine falcon, a sliver of amber, and a tuft of your own beard. If you have one, if not, eyebrows will do. You offer yours willingly. here comes the quirky bit you didn't expect. The boat is also gifted a name stone, a small river rock, inscribed with its name in runes, and tucked secretly under the aft deck. You carve the runes while sitting in silence just after sundown, under the first stars. It's peaceful, heavy with meaning. You christen her. Stormhold. Storm Warden in the old tongue. The name catches like a net in the mouths of the other builders when you tell them. It feels like her. Solid. Ready. The kind of name people shout through rain, not whisper across docks. You hold a private moment with your ship at dawn. Just her and you. She rests gently on her side supports. Dragon face half shadowed. Eyes staring empty across the fjord. You place your hand against her hull and whisper whatever thanks your tired, unwashed self can muster. Somehow it feels enough. Later, you and the other builders share a feast in the yard. There's mead so strong it could double as varnish, bread that tastes suspiciously like week-old caulking, and a roasted animal you're hoping is from the approved sacrifice pen. But spirits run high, jokes fly. One person passes out face first into a wood shavings room, which is, quite frankly, the most comfortable place available. And now, the ship is alive, according to every local ritual. But wait, you're not quite finished. Next up, the hand shields. You paint and mount round shields along the ship's wooden rails, each spaced by the width of a sword hilt. Some bear personal markings. Yours has a wolf paw curling around a hammer. Others show family crests, wild paddles, or practical nothingness. It depends on where the ship is bound. For trade, keep it subtle. For war, make it loud. Some people claim the shield wall helps protect the rowers. Others believe they're purely aesthetic. Intimidation tools as much as anything. Historians still argue whether Viking shields mounted on ships were truly useful in defense or simply convenient places to dry your ego. You suspect the answer is deeply both. And just for fun, one of the older boatwrights tells you of a ship where every shield had a face, different expressions carved on each: angry, laughing, surprised, sulking, even one that looked disturbingly like a sheep in crisis. The goal? Keep enemies guessing. The final gift is from your uncle. He hands you a small, carved wooden animal, a bear maybe, or a very stuffed-looking dog. Tie it to the front rib, he says, not in plain sight, just enough for her to know she's not alone. You nod, tie it with a strip of goat gut, and tuck it where no one but the gods and rot would find it. At dinner that night, someone asks you, "Do you think she'll last long?" You shrug. As long as most marriages, hopefully. Everyone laughs except old Tove, who looks into her bowl and murmurs, "Ships don't last." But the people who built them, oh, we echo. That stays with you. Because deep down, you know it's true. Stormhold now stands ready. She has her name, her gods, her symbols, her soul. She'll likely leave soon for distant work. Another crew, maybe even a different country. You might not go with her, but she'll always carry your hands. Your voice still curls inside her seams. Stormhold sails with another crew now. You handed her over with a stiff smile and calloused fingers that flexed like they weren't quite ready to let go. You weren't farewelling a boat. You were farewelling months of sweat, fear, laughter, pitch burns, and every splinter that embedded itself in your soul along with your skin. But you didn't expect what came next. A storm. Not a thunder-wailing, ends of days kind of storm, though close, but a quiet, creeping one. Whispered first in late-night gossip, salt-thick air, a dockhand muttering about shattered ribs on a hull out by the west rocks. Then a runner, panting, soaked, eyes wide like the moon. Stormhold wrecked. No, not sunk. She sits heavily on a lonely shore your people call Raven's Teeth, jagged black basalt and unforgiving tides. Nobody died, praise the gods. But she cracked along one side like a joke played too far, ribs showing through a splintered hull like bones poking skin. You set out at once, not as a passenger, but as a healer. The voyage is short and bitter. The ship you hitch aboard rides like a goat on polished ice, its seams complaining beneath your knees with every puff of wind. You try not to judge. You fail. When you spot her across the water, your ship, your stormhold, broken and half draped in seaweed, you don't speak. The crew is there when you arrive, building a windbreak from oars and cursing the gods of wet boots. They greet you with grins sharp with guilt. It wasn't her fault, one says quietly, eyes on the busted ribs. Rudder lines snapped mid-squall. Rocks came out of nowhere. You nod, because blaming the ocean is like accusing a candle of being too bright. You crouch by the exposed ribs and run a hand over the fracture, jagged, diagonal, clean but deep. A few planks split completely. 2 ribs bent inward like old knees. This isn't a quick fix. This is a rebuild. And ironically, it's the exact kind of misery you love. You work in a rushed blend of triage and prayer. Materials are scarce. No new timber piles out here, just driftwood, spare oars, and a stack of "this might work" planks. Someone dragged 3 miles inland. You make do. You always do. You remove the broken ribs first, unscrewing iron nails that went in strong and came out with a whimper. Funny how grief changes the sound of a tool. You splint the internal planks using scarf joints, bent into shape with steam, made from seaweed and boiled brine. Not ideal, not by the book, but functional. One of the oars you confiscate for a new rib still has its rower's name carved near the blade. You leave it visible inside the hull. Silent tribute. And now, the waterproofing. You have no tar, so you improvise. A stew of rotting kelp, whale oil, moss, and charcoal thickens halfway to pitch. It smells like Poseidon's breath, but it glues like a curse. You smear it over every repaired seam until the hull looks like an overcooked sea beast. Then recheck the interior straps and lash every rib tight. Quirky sailor's fix? You repurpose shields as temporary internal struts to hold the rib lines in place. One even has a face painted on it, laughing. You leave that one near the bow. Stormhold could use a grin. As twilight gnaws on the sky, you sleep curled against her hull. Protection, penance, something in between. You dream of her sinking, not with drowning cries or tragic music, but slowly, peacefully sliding beneath the waves like an old warrior deciding it's finally time to sleep. You wake with salt in your mouth and a renewed vengeance. Not today, old girl. Repairs last into the 3rd day. Each improvement feels more like an apology than innovation. You stitch a sail tear with gut cord and mend a cracked mast step with driftwood bored into with a screaming hot reindeer antler. Improvised? Yes. Permanent? Probably not. But stormworthy? Definitely. Historians still debate whether Viking shipbuilders had disaster protocol checklists or just relied on their sheer refusal to perish. You've learned it's mostly the second one. The sea offers one final trial before you'll know if it worked. A clean launch. You and a team of 6 use rollers made from log sections and oiled boots to shift Stormhold back down the basalt scree into the water. Heart pounding, hands shaking. You whisper softly under your breath. Push straight, don't bind her joints. Then louder, together. She groans once, slides, and then splash. She floats. Wounded, yes. Scarred, definitely. But alive. Breathing against the tide once again. The crew who wrecked her rouse in slow celebration, wide-eyed and reverent. You stand at the prow with your arms crossed and just a hint of smug in your brow. You earned it. You brought her back. And suddenly, out there on the cold gray horizon, you see it. Another ship. Long and lean, foreign flag at the mast. Probably a trader. Or maybe raiders with loose ideas about ownership. Either way, they turn once they spot the dragon prow coming toward them. Sails taut and oars slicing clean. Because a ship with battle scars and a figurehead still flashing its teeth. That's not a target, that's a warning. You return home with Stormhold 2 days later. The village watches from the cliffside as your ship limps into harbor, her seams weeping slightly, but her prow high and smiling. Someone throws a basket of flowers in your direction. You're not crying. That's just kelp fog. Later that night, you present the cracked rib you removed to your uncle as a trophy. He runs his thumb down the grain and nods. She speaks to you now? You shrug. She groaned a lot. Means she forgave you. And maybe that's what it is. This building, this mending, this attachment to something wooden and weighty and waterborne. It forgives you for every mistake, as long as you come back with a belt knife and tar brush and your heart in the right place. You hang the broken rib on the wall of the longhouse, just beside your first crooked plank and that chicken-shaped carving. Someone insists still looks like Odin if you squint. A reminder. Even shipwrights make mistakes. Great ones fix them. The first thing you notice when you arrive in Ireland is the trees, tall, wild, and somehow a little smug, unruly yew and beech trunks, showing deep twists, as if mocking your practiced eye for ship-worthy wood. You run your hand over a particularly gnarled trunk and murmur, "You're beautiful and completely useless, aren't you?" A local farmer gives you a look and slowly backs away. Don't worry, you get used to it. You never expected to work beyond the fjords. Not this far west, where the land speaks in soft moss and red earth, and the smoke smells different, sharper, spicier somehow, peat instead of pine. But when you were sent here as part of a hired team, on loan from your village to aid a Norse Gaelic jarl, there wasn't really a "would you like to go" conversation. It was more of a "you're going, pack your cedar oil and your sailbrush." So you sailed, you arrived, and you found a working dockyard tucked between two coastal cliffs, half shielded from the wind and fully overwhelmed by supplies that make no sense. Stone tools sit beside hand-planed lumber. Water barrels are stored inside the boat sheds. And the only thing organized is the large pile of seaweed, which the locals seem unusually possessive of. You don't speak the language fluently, but that doesn't stop you from shouting helpful advice in Norwegian at confused dogs and slightly less confused monks. Your Irish counterparts are craftsmen, sure enough, but their boat style is different. More squared hulls for quick beachings, wider keels, more linen sail, and less clinker technique. Their ships are like broadswords. Yours is a spear. The lead shipwright, a burly man named Phylan, who keeps ink-dipped twine behind his ears like earrings, greets you with what you think is either welcome or don't feed the goats. You nod. Friendship is born. The work begins with polite arguments. They offer planks of native ash and thorn. Tough, yes, but not easily steamed. You offer to reshape the frames for more curve, more sweep, more Norse flair. They question the need for overlapping seams. You question their caulking method, which involves goose feathers and berries. One quirky thing you learn fast: their pitch substitute is bog butter. That's right, actual ancient butter dug up from peat bogs and pressed into seams for waterproofing. It works suspiciously well. Smells like regret and cheese, but surprisingly, it holds. The keel piece is made from an Irish oak that's been drying for 5 years, blessed 3 times, and apparently once used as a ladder during a village escape from raiders. You run your tools along its belly and whistle low. Strong spirit in this one, Phylon says. You nod. Very laddery. You try to bring your own rhythm to the yard, the swinging motion for cloaked odds work, the resin stretching technique your uncle taught you that prevents bubbling in humid air. Some of the Irish workers copy it. Some ignore it and continue throwing duck fat into the fires to keep the tools honest. And bit by bit, you realize you aren't teaching. You're blending. Your Norse ribs meet Irish nails. Their corded rope meets your sail splices. One day, you even catch a monk drawing your ship design into his manuscript, next to a dragon that looks a bit like a potato with teeth. Still, accurate depiction. One afternoon, a disaster nearly undoes you. A snapped frame beam during sanding. You expected neat oak grain. Instead, the spiraled wood core cracked inward. The yard seizes up. Work halts. They look to you. You do what you've always done. Drop to your knees, inspect the break, then split it the rest of the way cleanly. You replans the angle, patch with red yew soaked in warm water and ash glue, a new trick you learned from an old Irish granny, and turn the failure into function. It flexes cleaner now, breathes easier. From that moment, the Irish workers stop calling you Norse Flamehead and start calling you Cherdai Moore, the big craftsman. Flattering. If slightly misleading, you're only moderately big. But you'll take it. You carve a small raven into the inside plank. They add a Celtic knot near the bow post, interlacing it around your dragon coils. The ship is becoming hybrid. Not one people's build, nor the others, but something new. Something not written in the sagas yet. That night, over a meal of earthy stew and questionably roasted eel, you learn that Phylon's great-grandfather once saw a Viking dragon ship glide into his bay. The memory was passed down like legend. Fire-eyed prow, blood-red sail, in the sound of singing that didn't sound like any hymn he knew. Now here you are, sea-soaked, sore-wristed, carving nearly the same dragon onto this generation's hull, side by side with the descendant of that terrified boy hiding in sheepgrass. Historians still argue whether such cultural collaborations were common or rare. Some archaeological finds suggest maritime workshops with blended technique, Norse fastenings in Irish hulls, Frankish sail patches sewn with Norse stitchwork. It's debated, but you're looking at it right now. It's happening in real wood, real sweat. You ask Phylon what they'll name the ship. Whatever name the sea doesn't take away, he says simply. 2 weeks later, she sails, a sleek, fierce thing, her seams sealed with butter, her dragon smiling against mist. You didn't know it then, but some version of this ship design would inspire ships back home. Small ways, in nicked blueprints, in the way others angled their ribs, in the quiet stories passed from apprentice to apprentice about the red-haired builder who once showed monks how to use a mallet. You walk back to the landing the day you leave, tools packed, boots muddy. Phylan slaps your back hard enough to knock all affection out of your lungs. You built well, he says. Come back next summer. You tell him you're pretty sure you accidentally adopted one of their goats. He smiles. Good, she's cursed. You sail home not just with cargo, but with echoes, threads of other styles tied into your stitchwork. Wood that's not quite your own, but now lives in your hands. You built it all, and it built you back. You return to your home shores a little older, a little louder in your knees when you crouch, and somehow, with an Irish goat that refuses to answer to anything but milk face. People greet you differently now, not just as a shipwright, but as a maker of things that return from far-off coasts with new stories burned into their beams. And just like that, your days shift again, not away from shipbuilding, but through it, because now you are the masters. It starts one muddy spring morning when your uncle nudges his porridge with a spoon, sighs halfway down the bowl and mutters, "Well, I reckon you run the workshop now." Then he leaves. No ceremony, no group hug. You check the forge. He's not there, just gone off to pursue quieter hobbies, which mostly seems to involve slipping into other people's boats. And then they arrive. Your apprentices. 3 of them. Not quite children, but not quite old enough to keep from accidentally setting pitch on fire indoors. You meet them in the yard, soaked boots slapping against frost-slicked logs. They smile at you like they've just eaten something strange and don't know if it was food or a test. First, there's Eurydice, a girl with fierce eyes and questions that come in fast volleys. Why do we taper the bowline curve? What angle avoids stern drag? When do we start looting? You respect her. Then there's Toke, tall and thin and already missing his left pinky toe due to a regrettable sled bend. He's stronger than he looks but can't remember the difference between a draw knife and a butter knife. You train him hard out of sheer fear he'll end up nailed to a plank. And lastly, there's Odd. He's called that for a reason, though no one knows if it's the name or the personality. Precise and once mended, a broken handle with glue made from mushrooms. It held better than tar. You try not to think about that too hard. Your workshop shifts to accommodate them. You rearrange your tools more than you like. You mark measurements twice instead of once, now that someone keeps flipping the templates for fun. You steal your own hidden hammer back 4 times in a week. Slowly, they begin to listen. You show them the sacred parts of the craft, the judgment of timber grain, how to steam planks without warping, the sound of correct caulking versus wishful poking. You make them hammer rivets until their arms shake and their hands stop flinching at sparks. You also teach the traditions, or at least your version of them. Demonstrate how to hang the goat tooth over the forge for temperance. Let the ship carry you at last, not to battle, not to port, but into silent passage beneath a sea of stars. She won't let you drift. She knows the way. Sweet dreams, builder.